Let's write the very first of what I hope to be many triggers in your career. We're going to start off with a classic Hello World trigger. If you didn't already know, the Hello World tutorial is a time-honored tradition for every coding tutorial in every coding language ever made. And it's pretty much the most basic code one can write. In this particular demo, we're going to populate fields whenever a lead is updated. The lead's first name will be hello, and the lead's last name will be world. I highly recommend at this point to code alongside me in your own Salesforce developer environment. This will help you get over any fear of coding, and it helps build some much needed muscle memory. Okay, here I am in a fresh new Salesforce development environment. I'm going to write this trigger through Salesforce Setup, since that's the quickest way to get started. To get to the trigger editor, go to Setup, Customize, Leads, Triggers, New. This here is your canvas and your mind is the paintbrush. Let's make art. Once you're here, follow along in your own developer org and type exactly what I'm typing letter for letter. It's common for new programmers to forget to use quotes and semicolons, so make sure you have them there. When you're done, hit the Quick Save button and your trigger should save with no detected errors. We can immediately see if our trigger works by simply updating an existing lead. Voila! Once we save, we see that the lead's first and last name are updated appropriately. Since our trigger only runs when leads are updated, if I create a new lead, the logic in our trigger will not fire. Now let me go through this trigger line by line and explain what's going on. The first line in this trigger describes its name, what event fires this trigger, and what object it's running on. Coding editors usually pre-populate this line for you, except for its three inputs. The first input is the trigger's name. Salesforce expects a name that includes no spaces. To make up for the lack of spaces, we use what's called camel case. Camel case simply capitalizes the first letter of each word to help make it more readable. You'll see camel case used often in many different programming languages. The next input is the object. The object we type here tells Salesforce that it should fire our trigger whenever events happen on this object. Now, events are our third input. Here we type a comma-separated list of events that will fire our trigger. We covered the three main types of events in the past module: insert, update, and delete. The before tells Salesforce to run this trigger right before a lead is updated. We'll go into that in more detail shortly. So to summarize the first line, we're creating a trigger named Hello World, and it fires before a lead is updated. Moving on to the second line, we have what I call the trigger loop. This has its own name because every trigger you will ever write will have a loop just like this. In a nutshell, multiple records can enter a trigger at once. For example, multiple leads could be updated in bulk. This trigger loop repeats all the code inside its brackets for each possible record. Each lead in this loop is temporarily assigned to a variable we're going to name L. Trigger.new is the list of all leads in this trigger. We'll also go into this in more detail soon. For now, just know that this line roughly reads, loop through all leads in trigger new, which is the list of all records entering this trigger, and for each record we're iterating through, temporarily assign it to the variable L. Now finally onto the part of the trigger that actually matters. Line 3 and 4 basically contain all of the logic of this trigger. The rest of the lines are known as boilerplate code, code that's just kind of there taking up space. In lines 3 and 4, we're setting fields on the lead using a format that may be familiar to you. Just as we would with formula fields, we can access the fields of a record using dots. Remember, L is the variable we're assigning to the current lead in our trigger loop. So we're setting L dot first name to hello, then we're setting L dot last name to world. And we repeat this for every lead in our trigger.